Interesting times. I'm doing this in June of 2020, and there is a lot going on with astrology during the month of June. Not least on the 18th of June, Mercury goes retrograde for the second time this year. That's only really going to go on for a few weeks until the 12th of July, so that's not too much of a long one. But around that time, there's a lot going on. Venus ends her retrograde on the 25th of June, and Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, and Pallas Athena, which is an asteroid, but nevertheless very influential on us Earthlings here. They're all involved in retrogrades around the time of the summer solstice on the 21st of June. And there is actually going to be an eclipse at that time as well. Now, we've already had an eclipse in June. It was on the 5th of June on the full moon. We had a lunar eclipse. That was about 8:14 UTC, something like that. And we're moving on now towards a new moon eclipse, which is an eclipse of the sun on June the 21st. Now, that is going to happen in 0 degrees of Cancer, so it's just as the Cancer influence gets its boots on and starts affecting us. And it's actually going to be 0 degrees and 36 to 38 minutes. The time of the actual solar eclipse is going to be 36 to 38 minutes of Cancer. Now, they say however many minutes of the degree the solar eclipse takes up, that sort of relates to the number of months going forwards, and that is actually about half a degree, because there are 60 minutes in a degree, so that's about half a degree. So we're looking at about half a year of very strong influence coming from that solar eclipse on the 21st of June. About 6 months, really. Now, that is going to be in Cancer, as I say, on June the 21st. It's really going to be affecting people more than anything born with personal planets and points around 25 to 30 degrees of the mutable signs. That's Gemini, that's Virgo, that's Sagittarius and Pisces, and approximately sort of 0 to 5 degrees in the early stages of the cardinal signs. That's Aries, Cancer, Libra and Capricorn. And they're the people who are going to be most significantly affected by it. But really, it's going to affect our whole world. By the way, if you would like to have a birth chart done and sort of find out all about these things and where you actually stand in astrology, a birth chart is a great way to find these things out. It's a snapshot of the universe at the time that you were actually born. It comes with a chart wheel which shows you all the alignments graphically. And a list of explanations. I do those all the time. If anybody would like a birth chart, do drop me an email at 35and83@gmail.com. I'll put that down in the description there. Subscribe to my channel while you're looking down there as well, by the way. That always helps. Now then, solar eclipse is a time of newness, really. New things come into being. And, of course, that's bound to be the case around any solstice. Now, it's the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. So, of course, the day length gets shorter after that, and we come back towards the colder weather. And it all gets dark, 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 right through until December the 21st, when the winter solstice kicks in, and we start lightening up again as we come towards summer of 2021. And believe me, there will be a summer of 21. The Earth is actually not going to be coming to an end or anything like that. But then we have a full moon eclipse as well, a lunar eclipse, and that's going to be in Capricorn, and that is going to be on July the 5th of 2020. Now, that kind of works in the opposite way to the solar eclipse, which is that time of newness, that time of great new opportunities and things coming into being. A lunar eclipse is more about taking away what no longer serves you, maybe asking the universe to take that away from you, maybe cutting the cords yourself. And it's never a bad thing to cut cords, because if we happen to cut a wrong cord that we actually still needed to have, that cord will grow back. So it's a safe thing to do, and it can be a very, very positive thing to cut cords with the past. Sometimes we've kind of agreed to be a part of something, maybe to help a person or a group, or maybe we've taken on a role in running something, and in the past that was a great thing, that worked, that was good for us, it was good for the other people involved. And maybe now, as time's gone forward, that's old news. those people or that group need to stand on their own 2 feet and bring in newness. Maybe you need to move on, maybe I need to move on. And that's the time really when cutting cords comes into being in a really positive way. Sometimes with friends we need to do it. I'm afraid I had to cut the cord with some friends because they're just kind of what you might call toxic worriers. You know, they worry about everything. And when I spend time around them, they would eventually get me worried every time. And I'd come away from it and feel good again. And I just had to cut those cords, you know. And that is what a lunar eclipse is all about. Now, that lunar eclipse on July 5th, 2020 is going to be at 13 degrees and 38 minutes of Capricorn. So that's going to affect people born with personal planets and points about 9 to 19 degrees of the cardinal signs. That's Aries, Cancer, Libra and Capricorn. That's going to be the most significant area that people are affected in. The next eclipse isn't until the 30th of November, and that's a lunar eclipse again, so we'll have another chance to get rid of what no longer serves us before Christmas. But don't wait till then. Do it on July the 5th, because that is actually very close to us now. Now, that might seem the wrong way round, you know, solar eclipse to bring in new things and then get rid of the old. But actually it's not. It works very, very well indeed, because at the moment we don't really know just how much these things in the past no longer suits us. But when we've had the solar eclipse on 21st of June, just as the northern hemisphere is having summer solstice and the southern hemisphere is having winter solstice, just as that happens, all those new opportunities, all those new positive feelings come in. And that is really going to highlight what no longer serves us. And as we live with that for about 14 days, I suppose 15 days, maybe something like that, just a couple of weeks, we live with all that newness and we really kind of decide where we want to be going with it, how we actually want to invite change into our life. And then we get the lunar eclipse and we actually get the chance to turn our backs really on what isn't good for us anymore. You know, what no longer serves us is essentially a waste of time. That's the harsh reality of it. And then we can move on to higher, happier and healthier things, you know, and that really is what it's all about. Now, that there have been 6 eclipses projected for this year. This is actually I think this is 3 and 4 that we're going through in the next couple of weeks. There are 6 of them all year. Now, in ancient Babylonian astrology, and I love to look back to ancient Babylonian astrology, it's the first astrology that we've got records of, you know. And there was an ancient belief in that time that eclipses sort of endangered royalty and kings, queens, the ruling classes. And also that if you had many eclipses in a year, it would be a difficult year. Sometimes there aren't many. Sometimes there can be as many as 7, and that would be a very difficult year indeed. So that was kind of long ago predicted that this would be a difficult year, and goodness me, it has been. We've had the big virus thing going on all over the world, and things are really going to be changing around that on the 21st of June when we have that solar eclipse in 0 degrees of Cancer. Because it's a time with all these planetary retrogrades and Mercury retrograde as well, throwing things into a really strong light. You could even say a harsh light. People are going to be starting to think, well, I'm not going to be messed about like this anymore. You know, we don't need to be kept in. We certainly don't need to be kept down. And when people actually really rise up and decide that they're not going to be messed about anymore, it's surprising how much can be achieved. We've seen everything around George Floyd in just in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Happening in America, in Minnesota, and it's spread throughout the world. I'm in Britain, and we've had statues toppled, and one even was thrown into the docks in Bristol, which people didn't want anymore. And I was really glad that that happened, actually. Our politicians have been saying, well, that's not really the way to do these things. We should have kept that statue in a museum. And there's a lot to be said for that, actually, to keep those old statues, to remind us of the mistakes of the past, because we should never forget. Just in the same way that the Nazi concentration camps, some of them have been preserved just so that we actually realise that, yes, you know, humanity can stoop to that level. But in Britain, in Bristol, it was a very big slave trading community 200 or 300 years ago, and there was a statue of a slave trader. And I've been to Bristol myself, and I've looked at that and I thought, my God, what is that doing there? You know, in these times, because kind of we have moved on a great deal from racism, and it's still a problem. Obviously, there's no getting away from that. It is still a big problem in the world. But in Britain, we've certainly moved on a long way from slavery. I don't think anybody really in their heart of hearts believes that people should be slaves. There is obviously a slave trade going on, most particularly with women in the sex industry and in other areas as well. But none of the people who do that actually believe they're doing the right thing, you know. So there is that understanding that it's wrong. And in the days of slavery, people believed it really was the right thing, and it was kind of important to push forward and keep on doing that. But what a massive change that people have risen up and actually thrown the statue into the docks. What a fantastic thing that so many people have reacted to the George Floyd killing, not just in the States but around the world. But most particularly in the States, it's become an issue, and for the first time perhaps ever, people are talking about defunding the police and forcing change, forcing a rebuilding of communities, forcing their way into new fairness. This, my friends, all lines up with this eclipse season. It really does. So there are big things happening. Now, I would imagine that in the July the 5th eclipse, particularly around that, we're also going to see greater understanding of women's issues. There are improvements in women's health likely to come up at that time as well. You know, new understandings of women's health. And new understandings, actually, of lots of things. That's just the biggest area I can see it happening. And we really are getting a new understanding of politicians and politics and the ruling classes who kind of run our world. And we're starting to realise that we don't have to put up with it. So, huge changes coming. No doubt about that one. So this latest eclipse cycle is most closely involved with Capricorn and Cancer. So you've got the Capricorn determination to get things done and to hang on tight to what people believe in. That's a very strong one. And the Cancerian influence, which is a lot more compassionate, but also actually fairly strict. You know, the Cancer energy is all towards kind of making sure good things happen to people, making sure the right things are done. And what we're likely to see in this eclipse cycle, and now I'm not just talking about the June 21st and July the 5th eclipses, but right through to the end of this year. And actually this began in 2019, this part of it. And it's all leading towards various kind of things that are changing, and I'll go through some of those. First one, a focus on balancing practical, earthy kind of parts of our personality to do with Capricorn with the more intuitive and creative Cancer energy. Then a need to sort of create more work-life balance. Now that has really been forced upon us to at least think about that by the pandemic that's going around the world in 2020. That really has changed the focus of things. People are working from home and are actually having trouble balancing home and work life on a new level, but on a level which actually forces it to get sorted out. We've all seen the YouTube videos, or at least I have. They're quite funny, so do watch them if you haven't yet, of problems with, in particular, news programmes where someone's trying to read the news seriously from home and their dog keeps jumping in, or the cat climbs on them, or the children want something. And the thing about that is it's absolutely real, you know. The news itself can be done in a very real way by people who are in quite a sort of fake condition. I think that's a big problem the BBC in Britain suffers from. You have to be very, very straight-laced, and you know, there are terrible things that happen on the news and they need to be done and reported on in a serious way. But there is no point coming so far away from the nature of life that we kind of lose relevance, which I think is what happens. So that work-life balance thing is in sharp focus. We might be forced to sort of focus more attention on our home life. We might be forced to focus more attention on our work life. But you always find one of those areas trying to dominate. And that really isn't a bad thing because it highlights the problem, excuse me, and it drives us towards balance. I must have a sip of tea. I work from home and I can have a cup of tea while I'm doing these things, which is great. Now then, issues with parents might be a theme. In fact, old, and if you know you've sort of grown up like me, old. Right, sorry about that. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to cut it out and you don't know what I'm talking about. But my alarm went off and it was time to get my fish cakes out of the oven. I can't stand fish, but they're so important that if I get fish cakes, they're not too fishy and I can just about eat them. But there we are. That's an example of kind of doing something I don't really want to do but need to do. And the eclipse season is very like that. And actually, some of the lunar eclipse energy about getting rid of what no longer serves you could actually be quite painful, but is worth doing. Anyway, issues with parents, as I was saying. We might need to heal the relationship or our memories of the relationship with our mother, with the feminine side, with Cancer, or the masculine side, which is more to do with kind of Capricorn energy in the way it's associated. Old family dynamics or wounds might resurface. Well, that's no bad thing. Could be awkward, but we need to heal them. But needing grounding, that's what really matters, We might actually find that there's a move between masculine and feminine energy and the way it affects us in our lives, because both Cancer and Capricorn are represented in this eclipse cycle. Something I touched on earlier, though, female health, women's rights, that kind of thing, they're quite likely to come into sharp focus and hopefully move forward. Hopefully new things are going to happen there, because new things need to happen there, really. I can't think of a worse way to run the world than to have it all done by men. And although there are a lot more women coming into positions of power in the world now, they tend to be women who've managed to play it the male masculine way and kind of get away with doing it like that. So it still perpetuates that masculine kind of zeitgeist of things, really. And that is going to change, friends. That really is going to change. And that's going to make things a lot more peaceful, actually, I think. Certainly a lot more sensible, a lot more down to earth, and a lot more realistic. And realism is really what this is all about. Particularly around the June 21st eclipse, I would imagine we're going to see some changes in world leaders. Seems to me very unlikely that our British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is still going to be the Prime Minister at the end of June. And it's only kind of a week and a half away as I make this video, and we're not seeing it yet. But there are whispers about it, and there is talk about it, and something might happen. As for President Trump, well, you're either for Trump or against him, and maybe people aren't going to change their minds that much, but he does seem to be having approval problems, and if he's going to hang on to power, he is going to need to bring some changes in there. I can see that. But that's a matter for him, and I don't live in America. I thank God for my American friends. I have many of them. It's one of the blessings of working online, actually. But I don't really understand the way it is in America. I watch different news broadcasts, like MSNBC seem to hate Trump, Fox seem to love him. I might have got that wrong, I don't know. But when I look at British media, I know how to sort of get a balance from looking at the different sides of things, because I'm used to the channel. But as I look out at America, I have no idea. But certainly a change is going to be involved for Donald Trump. There is no way around that. And change is actually happening. Very positive change is happening in the States, in people's minds at the moment. Hearts and minds, I hope, are going to lead to a world that's more about hearts and minds than it is about shock and awe, actually. There's definitely the kind of last vestiges of the masculine system in the throes of kind of shock and awe, trying to kind of get things back the way they want it. But it's changing, and that is all part of it. Now, we might feel sort of a lot more burned out saying all that if we don't actually focus on self-care, and that means self-awareness. So all that stuff's going on in the world. How does it actually make us feel inside, and how does it change our immediate world about that? We sort of go out and about, but we're still part of a microcosm, if you will. We're still one of our own group of friends. We're still part of our own family. How does the big stuff going on out there affect us inside? All that energy is going in that direction, and that really is what it's all about. We could very easily find our emotions becoming more accessible, and creative businesses, creative projects, that kind of thing. are likely to flourish better than they've ever done before, actually, because this is really an epoch-making eclipse cycle. Because we're coming into the age of Aquarius, you know, and it's going to be much more people-focused. There are actually going to be opportunities to care, because the old ways where kind of just nobody cares, work harder, it's coming to an end simply because it was always bound to burn out, and people are realising that the most positive thing to do is actually care for yourself, let other people care for themselves, and great things can still happen. So it's a wonderful time that we're coming into. Lots and lots of changes, really loads of changes, lots of planets retrograde as well. There'll be another video soon I'm going to do about the next Mercury retrograde, which is almost upon us. This is the 13th of June, so it's only 5 days away. It starts on the 18th of June, goes on to, 12th of July. So it's a short one, but that's really going to be a big part of changing people's awareness. You know, you get massive shifts of awareness with the lessons of a Mercury retrograde. They play into relationships of all kinds because it's all about communication. So that coming hard on the heels, well, no, in fact, the solar eclipse coming hard on the heels of that is going to bring these new opportunities in. Mercury retrograde is going to bring them into focus, and then we're going to have a lunar eclipse on the 5th of July to clear out the cupboards, to get rid of what no longer serves us. Anyway, friends, thank you very much for watching this one. I am now going to get cracking. Drop me an email if you'd like a birth chart, by the way. I will get back to you within 24 hours or so with your completed birth chart. It all goes through PayPal. It all goes through the mail. It all works nicely. So 35and83@gmail.com. Do leave me a comment, friends. It's always good to know who I'm sharing the journey with here. Helps me kind of zero into who I'm talking to and hopefully make better videos from you. Thumbs up if you've enjoyed it, and do subscribe to my channel as well. That really helps. Meanwhile, I'll see you again very soon, friends. Have a lovely time ahead. Peace.